Good day everyone, I am Shirley Antienso from group number 4. Today we are going to discuss responsible parenthood. Without further ado, let us begin. Responsible parenthood, as defined in the Directional Plan of POPCOM, is the will and ability of parents to respond to the needs and aspirations of the family and children. Parenthood is a shared responsibility of the husband and the wife to determine and achieve the desired number, spacing, and timing of their children according to their own family life aspirations, taking into account psychological preparedness, health status, sociocultural, and economic concerns. We all know that parenthood is an experience unlike any other, but no matter how enticing it is, anyone who is dreaming of building his or her own family someday should know that parenthood involves lifelong responsibilities, such as maintaining the physical, emotional, and mental well being of the children. To ensure the well being of children, parents are required to practice responsible parenthood. Now, let me proceed to the different types of family planning methods. Number one, we have rights and duties of parents. As a parent, it is your parental responsibility to make decisions concerning and affecting the care, welfare, and proper development of the child. Parents have the duty to protect their children's rights until they are old enough to make their way in the world. The family law in Australia defines the responsibilities that parents have in relation to bringing up their children. These include to protect your child from harm, to provide your child with food, clothing, and place to live, to financially support your child, to provide safety, supervision, and control, to provide medical care, to provide an education. Who has parental responsibility? The Family Law Act states that birth parents, adoptive parents, those who become parents through artificial conception or surrogacy, and those who satisfy presumptions of parentage are the only people to possess innate parental responsibility, which means that only these parents or those recognized as parents by the court have the ultimate authority for making decisions about a child. They are legally authorized to exercise parental responsibility without a court order, and their obligations continue until the child has turned 18 and don't end with divorce or separation. Your rights as a parent. Aside from parental duties and responsibilities, as a parent, you also have rights. The law allows parents to bring up their children according to their own values and beliefs. Decisions such as religion, education, discipline, medical treatment, and where the child lives will not be interfered with unless there are good reasons or the child's well being is at risk. For example, if there is abuse, if the child is not receiving education or necessary medical treatments. However, the concept of parents' rights does not include the right to have custody or contact with your children. For example, after separation. In situations where parental responsibility may be altered, a court will always consider what is in the best interest of the child and will use the welfare checklist before making their decision. A mother or a father can lose custody if they abuse, neglect, or otherwise endanger their child. 1. Sharing responsibilities. The importance of chores for kids' growth and development. After respect and kindness, the most important lesson children need to learn before they leave home is responsibility. It is parents' job to teach their children how to become responsible adults. Why is it important to share responsibilities at home? And what are the benefits of doing chores in the child's development? First, learning to do chores allows children to learn self-help skills. It helps in developing their independence while at the same time gaining a sense of responsibility and contributing to the day-to-day functioning of the family. Second, it boosts their confidence. One of the main benefits of doing household chores for a child is that it can significantly boost their self confidence. A lot of young children feel proud of themselves when they accomplish tasks, especially if you give them praise or reward for doing so. When a child can complete adult tasks with little to no help, they feel more responsible and grow up. Toddler and the preschooler growth and development. Nurturing preschooler learning, the Reggio Emilia approach. Preschool and primary education are two of the most vital school years of a child. There are a lot of teaching methods available that can help nurture a child's development, such as the Reggio Emilia approach. The Reggio Emilia approach was developed by pedagogist and psychologist Loris Malaguzzi after World War III. Number 1. Children learn to become more independent. When you share responsibilities at home, it is good to provide kids with the ones that are appropriate for their age. You may need to assist them with certain tasks, supervise them if they are doing a chore for the first time, but eventually they will be able to do it by themselves. Children who are 2 to 3 years old can do simple chores, such as putting water into the vet's bowl and putting laundry into the laundry basket. For bigger kids, they can learn how to set and clean the table with minimal to no supervision. Number 2, it helps them learn about social responsibility. Let your kids know that doing chores keep the house well maintained and other family members all have to do their part. When they see this, they may be more than willing and happy to contribute to the family. By teaching them the importance of participation, they will want to take part in more group activities and will want to help out. Teaching them about togetherness and social responsibility relies on consistency.
Good day everyone, I am Novi Gilby Guerrero from Btled 3B and I am one of the reporters for today. So for today, I will discuss the meeting children's needs. Promoting family engagement, it should have communicating with families. Strong relationships with families are built on successful communication. Providing family and children information and knowledge is a critical piece of your work as a preschool teacher. In the same way, sharing information with families about their children and their development can improve or harm the partnership between home and preschool. Communication between teachers and families occurs during daily hellos and goodbyes, as well as in more formal activities such as family meetings. All of these opportunities require you to be aware and conscious of the family's characteristics, including tone, choice of words, and nonverbal communication, such as facial expression and body language. When you are aware of these characteristics, you communicate in ways that are more supportive and respectful of families. Families will be eager to know how their child is doing, and you can support comfortable and effective communication by offering encouraging responses and asking for clarification if something is not understood. So, let's move on to the importance of communicating with families. Positive communication is perhaps the most powerful tool that you can use with the families. Effective communication helps to inform, reassure, and engage families, which all help establish and build a strong partnership between staff and families. Moreover, positive communication skills helps to make sure that accurate information is shared, expectation is shared, and trust is established. Communication and relationships with families helps to build trust. Trust is an important part of helping to make sure that you maintain partnership with families and work as a team with families to help children and meet their goals. Trust between you and families makes parents feel good about the program and its ability to meet their children. Communication preferences may be related to cultural or community's values, priorities, and commitments. For example, Sun and Wang found that Korean-born mothers, even those who spoke English well, had difficulty communicating with teachers face-to-face. Their preference was to communicate with teachers through email or program letters. When communicating with families, It is also important to understand and consider different forms of greetings and use of titles that may be preferred, male and female roles defined with various cultures, nonverbal communication and body language, example, eye contact, use of touching, use of physical space. Other ways of communicating with families include program website, email, family meetings or conferences, newsletters, and articles of interest. Different forms of communication can play an important role in easing the process. Using a combination of communication styles with families might work best for their needs to be met. In having difficult conversations with families can be difficult for a number of reasons. Sometimes you might worry that families will be upset by something you share and even decide to withdraw their child from your program. You may also worry the family will stop communicating with you altogether. Misunderstandings can also occur as your views and understanding of a situation may differ from that of a family member. In these instances, it is helpful to consider the multiple perspectives to a situation. As children and families join your program, establishing strong and meaningful relationships with them starts immediately with getting to know them. It is important to learn about their interests, their heritage and culture, their needs and their hopes and dreams for their children in a respectful way, and use this input to enhance the quality of your work in preschool. As you continue to engage with families, think about how you want to be treated with dignity and respect, and assume the families of children in your care want to be treated the same way. During this time, it is critical to maintain confidentiality and respect families' right to privacy. Now let's move on to the sharing information with families. Now think about the reverse scenario from the one described in the previous section. Situations in which you were the one receiving information. For example, during a visit to your doctor's office, what were things that made you feel that the doctor or nurse sharing information with you was doing so in an effective way? What was good or not so good about that experience? What made you feel that the individual was sharing information with you in a respectful way? Was the information provided in a way that helped you understand? Did you have the opportunity to ask questions? Did you feel that the person talking to you had your best interest in mind? Just as you have to be careful and considerate about gathering information from families, it is critical that you do the same when sharing information with families. As a preschool teacher, it is important to help families understand their child's development and share with them information that you have gathered about their child. Always use family-friendly language and avoid jargon, including terms, acronyms, or terminology that families may not understand. According to the National Association for the Education of Young Children, one of the most important issues in early childhood policy and practice is ensuring that children are ready and prepared for successful school experience. As children grow and approach the school age years, families and professionals often talk about readiness. In your work at preschool, families may ask you to share information about whether or not you think their child is ready for kindergarten. National Association for Education for Young Children believes that schools are responsible for meeting the needs of children and for providing them with the service they need to reach their maximum potential. Specifically, National Association for Education of Young Children supports that promoting school readiness requires giving all children access to opportunities that promote school success, being responsive to children's individual differences, and establishing appropriate expectations about what children should be able to do when they enter school. When talking with families of children in your care, consider sharing the following about what they can do to foster their children's development and to support your work at preschool. Spend time playing, talking, and engaging with your child. Create routines at home that children follow, example, meal times or bedtimes. Encourage and answer questions from your child. Engage book reading with your child. Familiarize your child with symbols in their environment, example, letters and numbers. Talk to your child and encourage him or her to talk to you about the world around them. Provide your child with opportunities for social interaction outside of school, and involve children in activities that include planning and carrying out tasks. Example, making a list and going to the grocery store, and following a recipe to cook or bake something.
I am Rochelle Jane C. De Dios, your next reporter. Now, let us proceed to primary needs of children. There are 5 physical needs of children. Physical needs such as physical development from the start, influences on early physical growth and development. Culture impacts how we see and interpret behaviors and development. The brain's role in physical development. Supporting physical development for all learners. Physical development from the start. Infants are born with fully developed systems that allow their bodies to function, such as ability to suck, swallow, and breathe. Caregivers must understand the various stages of infant and toddler physical development so that they can respond to children's needs appropriately. Influences on early physical growth and development. There is no exact age at which all infants should be able to grasp object or hold up their head without support. Physical development occurs at different times for all children depending on many factors, such as a child's unique characteristic. Culture impacts how we see and interpret behaviors and development. Culture shapes so many parts of an infant's and toddler's development. You must understand the practices, beliefs, and values of the families you support. Without this understanding, it is difficult to interpret the infant's and or toddler's behaviors and development. The brain's role in physical development. Infants and toddlers' early life interaction and experiences help them make sense of the world. It is important for infants and toddlers to have time for these new experiences and to explore the world around them with a trusted caregiver. The safe space that you create for their exploration ensures that their brain are able to focus on learning, developing, and making connections. Supporting physical development for all learners. Physical development include gross and fine motor skills, consume the interest of infants and toddlers as they practice learned skills and look to develop new ones. Healthy physical development is dependent on adequate nutrition, brain development, the central nervous system, muscles, bone, and the interaction and experiences offered to infants and toddlers. 6 emotional needs of a child. Safe and security, routine, discipline and consistency, love, uniqueness, acceptance, recognition, and approval. Safety and security. Children need to feel secure and safe in order to thrive and develop emotionally. When they feel loved and safe, they find the courage to start discovering the world, and this is how they grow and learn. Young children learn best when their family and home life is predictable and safe. Routine. Children who have daily routines feel more secure because their days are predictable. They find it comforting to know what to expect in a day. If there was no predictability to the day, they would easily become overwhelmed and unsettled. Discipline and consistency. Discipline should be fair and consistent, so your children always know what is expected of them and what their limits are. Inconsistent or harsh disciplinary styles do not result in children who learn self-control and self-discipline, as they are peer-based. A fair and calm style of discipline in the home will aid this process. Love. Children need lots of hugs and kisses, and they also need to be told that they are loved by their parents. Feeling love is the most important emotional need of a child. This gives them emotional security and makes them feel safe and secure in their own body and mind. Uniqueness. Don't underestimate children, but don't push them unrealistically towards your own vision for them either. They need a relaxed and a safe environment within which to develop their own talents and aptitude. Acceptance, recognition, and approval. When children receive unconditional love, it shows them that they are accepted as they are. This builds their self-confidence, which is the best gift you can give a child for their journey through school. Acceptance and approval should never be conditional if your child is to learn to feel worthy. Milestone for emotional development. Developmental milestones are behaviors or physical skills seen in infants and children as they grow and develop. The milestones are different for each age range. By 3 months, she gargles back to you when you talk to her. By 4 months, she recognizes familiar people and shows excitement when she sees them. 5 to 6 months, she strokes or pulls the hair of someone holding her. 7 to 12 months, she is afraid of strange people or places. 12 to 18 months, she shows her happiness or frustration. Emotional milestone for 2 years old. She tries to get attention through her behavior. She sometimes hits or bites to get a reaction. Emotional milestone for 3 years old. She talks about herself, her family, and her possessions. She prefers playing with certain friends over others. Emotional milestone for 4 years old. She becomes competitive. She has basic social skills and is able to greet, talk, and answer questions if this behavior was modeled for her. Emotional milestone for 5 years old and 6 years old. She tries to consider others' suggestions while playing and begin to learn the value of compromise and negotiation. She is still learning the consequences of her action and accepting responsibility for her actions.
Why is it important to develop emotional skills? It's simple, because they will have well-developed emotional skills that might help them in every day in their lives. So children who have well-developed emotional skills have these followings. First is better health. So it is important to have a better health because the world say, our health is our wealth. Next is less stress. Less stress is really important because it might help the children's emotional status okay. Next is better relationships with friends. If they have well-developed emotional skills, they can communicate with their friends properly. Next is better behavior. They have a better behavior and they can use that better behavior to communicate with their loved ones. And next is a positive attitude. If the children have a positive attitude, they can now conquer all the problems wisely. Next is less conflict with siblings and parents. The children will have a good relationship with their siblings and parents. Next is more self-confidence. If they have more self-confidence, they will face the problems with full determinations. Next, better results at school. Having a well-developed emotional skills can result to children's better performance to school. The children have a focus and not distracted. Next is more motivation. They will encounter many problems, but they have so many motivations. That's why they will overcome by the help of having a motivations. Next is self-acceptance. Having a self-acceptance, because in that way, they will not encounter self-pity, self-conscious, but at least they have having a self-confidence. Next is good communication skills. This is one of the most important skills. They will need it in every day in their lives. Next, the ability to make decisions. They are now confident to make decisions on their own. And last but not the least is less influence for peer pressure. They will not encounter peer pressure because they are confident enough to handle their emotions. Next reporter, please.
Hi, I'm Erica Nukin and I will discuss the 25 tips for raising an emotionally healthy child. How do you ensure that your child has these 7 requirements met while still raising them to be emotionally healthy? Here are some straightforward, doable suggestions for increasing emotional acuity and maturity. Number 1. Accept your child unconditionally. Unconditional affection and acceptance are crucial for a child's emotional growth. This will have an effect on all of a child's future connection and is crucial for a child's sense of identity. Number 2. Be affectionate. Child or children require frequent physical interaction. Don't forget to be affectionate with your spouse as well. Setting an example of a healthy relationship is crucial since it will have an impact on your child's future relationships. Number 3. Talk to your children often. At every chance, speak to your kids in a gentle, caring voice. Along with physical affection, talking is one of the best methods to establish a connection. Number 4. Listen. Don't forget to listen to your children. Really listen. We are living in a very distracted society where we do everything on the run. Make sure that you take time to stop, listen to what your child is saying, and respond. Number 5. Create a peaceful atmosphere at home. Your home environment should be organized and peaceful. This creates a healthy atmosphere in which learn through exploring and discovering. Number 6. Create a safe environment. Your home should also be a physical safe place in which to explore without any danger. Number 7. Allow lots of time for play. Play is a way that children learn, and it's while they are playing that they develop emotionally maturity. Number 8. Be available. Being emotionally available for a child is just as important. When your children needs you, make an effort to stop what are you doing and be available. Your time with your little ones is limited and should not be spent in distracted mode. Make a special effort to not be on your phone during time you spend together. Number 9. Make time over and above being available when you are with your children. It is also important to make time during your busy schedule to spend time together. Time is limited, but it will always be split between the things you prioritize most. So number 10, supervised play. Children up to the age of preschool need to be supervised by an adult during play. Even though older children are able to play cooperatively, they still need the presence of an adult nearby or they will feel unsettled. 11. Keep your promises. A positive relationship between parent and child can only be formed on mutual trust. This also teaches them to form trusting relationships with one throughout their lives. So number 12, encourage sharing of emotion. Teach your child to openly share his emotions. Have frequent discussion about how he or she feels or how the feels after a particular experience. Next is 13. Allow your child to experience all emotion. It is also important that your children are allowed to experience the full array of emotions, even this good or even this bad. When your children are independent, they must be able to deal with their emotions and not let a small disappointment such as not winning a race in school. Number 14, be an involved dad. A father's role in his child emotion development is crucial. Children need to feel just as loved by both parents and they need solid male and female role model in their lives. Number 15, teach your child to make choices. Children must learn to make choices from an early age. When they make decisions, they learn about accepting the consequences of those decisions. 16 is show an interest. 17, encourage physical activities. 18 is teach independence. 19, provide discipline. 20, lot a lot. 21, be an example. 22, encourage independent problem solving. And also 23, encourage fantasy play. 24, teach gratitude. And lastly, teach please, thank you, and sorry. So, let's now proceed to the social emotional needs of the young child. The development of safe and secure relationship within the children learn how to manage emotions and self-regulate. Form the blueprint for successful future regulation of emotion and social competence. The foundation of socially emotionally young child is relationships. Quality relationship with children, families, and practitioners are the base from which evidence-based strategies can be implemented to cater for social emotional needs of children. The teaching pyramid is an example of a multi-tiered framework particularly designed for supporting social emotional learning in early childhood context. Multi-tiered frameworks consist of the following three tiers of intervention and support: universal or tier 1, targeted or tier 2, and intensive or tier 3. The tiers of the teaching pyramid reflect the same focus area: promotion or universal, prevention targeted, and intervention is intensive. So now let's go to the promotion. Universal tier 1, building relationship between teachers and children, teachers and caregivers, children and children. It is also important to include here those adults who are significant in the child's life beyond the school and home, such as practitioners from government and community agencies if applicable. Number 2, prevention or targeted tier 2. Focus on teaching of social and emotional skills needed to solve problems, demonstrate feelings, and develop friendships. And then the intervention or intensive tier 3 is for those individual children needing targeted support, functional behavioral assessment to ascertain the function of behavioral and develop an intervention plan is the focus of this type, teaching new approach behaviors to replace the inappropriate behaviors or new behaviors that serve the same functions but are acceptable in the environment. So, the question is, how does this child know how to form and be in friendship with others? They don't. They need to be taught. Sorial 2015 details the following social skill. And these are empathy, or providing time to check in nurtures empathy, encourage regulation, and show care and concern. Turn taking, in simple explanation, my turn, your turn. Sharing, plan activities where they can practice sharing and ensure they know and it looks like, sounds like to share. Joining in, join the game with the child and stay and play for a moment by guiding them in and helping them engage. And conflict resolution, talk through situation and conflict. So that's all. This is my topic, and I wish you learned something new today.
Intellectual needs. Intellectual development refers here to the changes that occur as a result of growth and experience in a person's capacities for thinking, reasoning, relating, judging, conceptualizing, etc. In particular, it concerns such changes in children. There are a number of different approaches to the study of intellectual development in children. As in the history of most branches of scientific knowledge, the study began with observation and description. For many years, descriptive accounts of children's thinking, reasoning, and other intellectual capacities were thoroughly mixed with descriptions of their social and emotional development and of their verbal and motor skills. Moreover, there was at first tendency to attribute to the child mental processes that were simply miniature version of adults through patterns. Such early observers as Darwin 1877 were careful and deliberate, but their records often reveal the limitations of studying only one child at the biases of the observer. The study of children's intellectual development has been approached from a variety of angles. The study began with observation and description, as uh, as is typical of the development of most fields of scientific knowledge. For many years, description of children's linguistic and motor developments, as well as of their social and emotional growth, were fully mingled with assessment of their thinking, reasoning, and other intellectual abilities. Additionally, there was a uh, propensity for to first mistakenly believe that infant brain processes were just scaled down version of adult true processes. Although thorough and deliberate, early observers like Darwin 1877 frequently shown their own prejudices and the limits of studying just one child in their observations. Predictably, the early and systematic observation of one child at a time was eventually replaced by systematic efforts to measure children's behavior and capacities in standardized and objective ways. The growth of the mental testing movements in the first 40 years to the 20th century testifies the enthusiasm that was generated by the possibility of applying the precision of quantitative measurement to the task of comparing individual children and calibrating the changes that take place over the early years of life. Although observation had been supplemented by measurement, the primary purpose of these efforts remained descriptive, and the generalization achieved were themselves only description of trends and and improvements that occurred consistently with increasing age. Naturally, the early haphazard observations of one child at a time gave way to systematic attempts to measure kids' behavior and abilities in standardized partially ways. The expansion of the movements for mental testing in the first 40 years to the 20th century is a testament to the excitement created by the prospect of using quantitative measurements, accuracy to compare and calibrate individual children, and track developmental changes over the course of infancy. Although uh, although measurement have been added to observation, the major goal of these efforts remained descriptive, and the generalization reached were later more than descriptions of trends and improvements that consistently happen with aging. Still more recently, since about 1950, there has been an increasing movement toward the laboratory study of the ways in which patterns of development themselves change as age changes. This recent work has been not so much concerned with the effect of age itself as with the development of children of certain functional relationship between experience and performance that have been demonstrated in human adults and have been found lacking in most infrahuman species. The emphasis is on the application of laboratory controls and experimental manipulations to the study of cognitive development. The aim is to control the stimulus condition under which behavior is observed and to explain why intellect develops as well as describing how and when it develops. The focus is on using experimental intervention and lab controls to explore cognitive development. The goal is to regulate the stimulus settings uh, under which behavior is observed. Explain why intellect develops and describe how and when it develops. Such an approach does not obviate the need for study of the child's understanding as it changes with age. Rather, it relies on developmental descriptions of intellectual processes and products of clues as uh, as to when a certain level of understanding or specific intellectual accomplishment is likely to be achieved, and what repertoire of cognitive processes constitutes the means available for such an accomplishment to the age. Even the correlation of processes with products over ages, however, leaves the detailed cost-effect analysis is still to be performed. Such a strategy does not eliminate the requirement for research on how child's knowledge develops over time. Instead, it looks to developmental description of intellectual processes and product for hints about when a certain level of understanding or particular intellectual accomplishment is likely to be attained and what set of cognitive processes constitute the tools available for such an accomplishment at that age. But even if processes and products are correlated over time, a true cause and effect study is still required. Although the present article is not primarily concerned with age changes per se, it should be noted that the description of age changes in intellectual functioning continues to thrive in two lines of research. One is the continued development and refinements of standardized tests of intelligence refinement. Refinement would mean it have changes. In order to predict an individual's future intellectual achievement and to select, train, and guide children whenever whenever a test-derived forecast can aid in making decisions on their behalf. The second line of research is that of John Piaget in his associates on cognitive development. This large body of work has been concerned with the ontogenic unfolding and evolution of cognitive capacities in the child. And like the work of Heinz Werner, 1926, it has an organic quality and complexity that are quite different from the empirical item analysis tradition to the test developers. Both of these lines of research are structural and emphasis. They are primarily concerned with identifying the component parts or capacities of the intellect and with the organization and arrangement of these parts. The test developers are concerned with objective measurements of capacities in quantitative terms governed by a sophisticated statistic and well worked out theory of measurement. The genetic epistemologists, on the other hand, have followed Jean Piaget's lead in attempting to describe the step-by-step development of the child's understanding of his words as it progresses towards a formal, abstract, and logical comprehension of operation in relation in that word. Recent investigators stimulated by Piaget's work have begun the task of isolating the conditions necessary for cognitive changes and the explosion of processes as well as products. Both of these research areas place a structural emphasis, meaning that their main goals are to determine the individual components or intellectual capacities as well as how they are organized and arranged. The test creators are interested in the quantitative, objective measuring of abilities under the control of a sophisticated statistic and well-developed measurement theory. On the other hand, genetic epistemologists have attempted to define the child grasp of his word as it develops towards a formal, abstract, and logical comprehension of processes and relations in that word, following Piaget's example. Recent researchers have started the efforts of identifying the prerequisites for cognitive changes and the explanation of processes inspired by Piaget's work. In contrast, a functional emphasis, a concern with dynamics, processes, and interrelationships is found in the descriptions of cognitive development and in the exploratory of dynamic mechanism in cognitive change that have largely been undertaken by American behaviorists and behavior analysis and by Soviet pedagogists. These lines of research are more concerned with the processes of learning and thinking than with the structure of understanding. It is the contributions of these functionalists that the present articles is primarily devoted. It will be necessary first to summarize the most important age changes that have been described from infancy to adolescence. Considerations is then given to cognition, seen as the elaboration and selective generalization of simpler forms of learning and conditioning. Concepts such as mediation, meditation, learning sets, and expectancy are discussed in relation to experimental studies of discriminations learning and discriminations reversal, concept formation, and the perceptual constancies, curiosities, and exploratory motivation are treated in relation to orienting responses and observing behavior. Research on acquired distinctiveness, equivalence, and relevance of cues is presented as evidence for the importance of general class of intervening responses, and the major role of language in this connection is stressed. Finally, considerations is given to individual differences in cognitive style, including discussion of such variables as fields, dependency, rigid- rigidity, reflectivity, and creativity. These research areas are more interested in how people learn and think than how they are understanding think than how they understand things. The focus of the current essay is primarily on these functionalist contributions. It will be required to start by listing the most significant age changes from infancy to adolescence that have been discussed. After that, cognition is discussed, which is viewed as the development and selective generalization of basic learning and conditioning processes.
Overview of age changes. The first one, infancy. Very little behavior in infancy possesses that degree of orderliness and abstractness which would qualify it as intellectual or cognitive. There are evident, however, the beginnings of systematic relationship with the environment that imply understanding on the primitive level. Beyond the specific and identifiable reflexes, newborn behavior is usually described as massive, diffuse, and all or none in its occurrence. Stimulus evidence means perfectual recognition of the same object, person, or event under variable appearances due to changes in distance, illumination, context, angle of regard, and that like. Expectations. If certain events occur in a brief, invariant sequence with considerable frequency and regularity in the infant's environment, she or he is capable of displaying anticipatory responses that constitute, for many psychologists, sufficient evidence of expectancy. Exploratory behavior. One of the most persistent observation of infants of many species is their exploratory behavior, from which curiosity, both as a cognitive and as a motivational variable, is inferred. Persistent handling, mouthing, smelling, and visual scanning seem to be occurred in the first year or 9 months, in proportion to the familiarity of the stimuli. Communication language. Acquisition of communication language means the child learning to respond to simple instruction and demands made by others and his growing ability to verbalize his own needs and states wishes with sufficient accuracy and clarity that others can respond appropriately. Most of his learning is acquired as part of their training in daily routines, such as feeding, dressing, sleeping, and elimination. Next is referential language. Consists of a collection of names for objects and events that enables the establishment of a simple representational system. The child of 3 can name common objects and actions and can pick object. Unverbalized comprehension. Progress in unverbalized comprehension during the second and third years is less noticeable. That is linguistic development. The child can interpret the social significance of an increased range of gesture and facial expressions, which by associate come to signal more primary rewards and threats. Preschool. The child from 3 to 5 years makes intellectual progress, primarily in establishing a frame of reference for his own identity within the family, internalizing a set of societal standards or behavior, copying a set of assumptions and beliefs about good and bad conduct, and assuming prescribed age and sex roles. Objectivity and planning. While the process of socialization discussed above, it is a pure instance of cognitive development. It furnishes evidence for and practice with a new relatively and objectivity in a child's thought. Discrimination learning. Dimension of meaning other than the evaluative become available to the child. Language and verbal behavior. Language gains are intensive in the period from 3 to 6 years, but the progress appears more in pronunciation, grammar, and vocabulary than as an aid to abstraction and generalization. Middle childhood. Between the ages of 6 and 11, the child's capacity for thought and reasoning shows its most significant growth. Verbal meditation. Recent research indicates that the discontinuity in cognitive function is not so much unobserved. Role-taking and communication. There is a corresponding growth during middle childhood in role-taking and communication skills. Later childhood began at age 10 to 11. Development is more quantitative than qualitative. Existing capacities are refined and extended to new materials. In particular, the child's ability to view problems in a variety of social contexts, to comprehend the variable source of other people's behavior, expand rapidly during adolescence. That's all. Thank you for listening.
Processes and mechanisms of cognitive change. Perception. Research on children's perception concerns itself mostly with psychophysical determination of absolute and differential thresholds, susceptibility to illusions and their effects. Perceptual constancies, scaling of preferences and capacities of blind and deaf children. Constancies and concepts. There is a considerable body of literature on the development of the perceptual constancies in the children and the field determination of perceptual experience as a function of age. Because experience and knowledge are highly relevant to illusion susceptibility and the perceptual constancies, it is unfortunate that these relationships have not been more thoroughly explored, especially in the literature available in English. The perceptual constancies, for example, may be regarded as prototypic instances of concept formation, to the extent that an object is recognizable itself, regardless of distance, angle of regard, illumination, and other variable conditions of viewing. Its successive appearances may be formally analyzed as different instances of a single concept on perceptual development, perceptual constancy, and illusions and after effects. Exploration and recognition. An image is said to be formed and effectively stored to the extent that the child engages in voluntarily scanning, handling, vocalizing, or other exploratory activity that provides him with feedback from this activity. The feedback must be isomorphic with critical features of the object being explored in order for a useful image to be formed. Thus, proprioceptive feedback from thorough, active exploration of relevant aspects of stimulus is the stored image against which the feedback from subsequent exploration of new stimuli can be compared to determine equivalence or difference. Reading. The child has to select the match of a standard artificial grapheme from an array containing a copy of a standard and a number of systematically constructed variants of the standard that are more or less difficult to discriminate from it. The transformations used to generate the array of variants are based on a prior analysis of critical and non-critical variations in letters of alphabet. Examples of critical variations are line-to-curve transformations such as D versus O. Example of break-to-close transformations are C versus O. The rotations and reversals such as N versus Z or W versus M. The non-critical transformations included slants or tilts, with resulting compression, foreshortening, and other perspective distortions. Observing and orienting responses. In children's discrimination learning, it appears to matter whether the locus of response is in the stimulus, immediately adjacent to it, or spatially removed from it. Similarly, reinforcement is most effective when its locus is closest to that of stimulus and response, and when minimum of distracting consumatory behavior is elicited by delivery of reinforcement. Semantic conditioning. A typical procedure might begin with conditioning vasodilation or GSR by pairing presentations of the word house with mild electric shock or a loud noise of sudden onset and brief duration. Once conditioning is established, a test series of words is presented including house, but also, for example, mouse and building. A response to the former would be regarded as evidence for morphological or primary generalization and its characteristic of young children. A response to the latter would constitute evidence for semantic or mediated or secondary generalization and is characteristic of older children and adults. Learning sets and transfer of training. Developmental studies of children's learning have increasingly been concerned with the effects of certain kinds of per-training experiences on subsequent learning and transfer test performances. To the extent that the task does not change substantially from per-training to the test, the experiment measures only recall or savings, and would not ordinarily be of much interest to the student of cognitive development. Individual differences. The certain aspects of personality and temperament can both influence and can be influenced by cognitive capacities. But systematic and objective research into the structure of cognitive styles and their influence of thinking and subsidiary processes is fairly recent. Reflection impulsivity. It is of interest to students of intellectual development because it has been investigated extensively in children as well as in adults, and because it correlates consistently with an extensive cluster of performance measures.